Hello all and welcome to the Rails board meeting. This is Friday, February 25th, 2022. I am Tom Stagg, president of the Rails board, and I call this meeting to order at 1 o'clock. In accordance with the Government Emergency Administrative Act, PA 100-0640, the Rails board of directors find an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent, and believes it is in the best interest of Rails to hold a virtual meeting to perform essential business. Everyone, please remember to unmute yourself before you speak and say your name when making a motion or a comment. All votes will be by roll call. Thank you. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Starting Sue Busenbark. I see you, but you're muted.
Yeah. Here.
Ellie Cox. Alice Creason.
Here.
Robin Hollenthal.
Here.
Diane Hollister.
Here.
Chris Kenny.
Here, and I'm sorry, my camera isn't working.
Okay, thanks. Jennifer McIntosh. Scott Poynton. Becky Spratford.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Teppen. Monica Tolva.
Here.
Alex Vancina. And Karen Boydick.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Emily. Now for recognition of guests and announcements. We will handle the guest and public comments at the same time. Emily, will you read the names of the guests who are participating via Zoom?
Yes. Deirdre Brennan, Emily Feister, Monica Harris, Sharon Swenson, Wesley Smith, Stacy Palmisano, Grant Halter, Joe Philippek, Mary Witt, Mark Hatch, Layla Heath, and I would like to introduce Catherine Hens. Catherine, say hello and wave.
Hello, everyone.
Catherine is one of our new admin assistants, and also Greg McCormick. Did I miss anyone?
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
If Emily has not read your name, please put in the Zoom chat so that she can read it and add it to the minutes. We're handling public comments via Zoom or by previous submissions to Emily. Emily, did you receive any comments?
I did not.
Okay. If not, does anyone have any comments at this time? Okay, then moving on to agenda item number 5. That is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the 5.1 adoption of agenda, 5.2 Rails board minutes of January 28th, the special board meeting, 5.3 Rail board minutes of January 28th, the regular meeting, and another Rails board meeting, the closed session meeting on January 28th, and 5.5 approval of disbursements. Does anyone wish to move any of the items to the regular agenda for further discussion? If not, may I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda?
This is Diane, so moved.
Okay, Diane, thank you.
Karen, second.
Karen, thank you, Karen. Okay, Emily, will you please call roll?
Yes. Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Alice Creason,
Yes.
Robin Hollenthal,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Monica Tolva,
Yes.
Karen Boydick,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes. All right, motion carries. Next, we have Sharon Swanson with the Rails financial report.
Good afternoon, everyone. You will find the financial statements for the month of January in your packet. The January 31st general fund cash and investment balance of 20.8 million would fund approximately 21.7 months of operations. Revenues through January of $7,867,981 were $162,787 above budget this month. And this is primarily due to the January 26th receipt of 2 of the 4 remaining live and learn payments from the APC grant. These totaled $2,145,000. And since I wrote my report, Rails did receive the last 2 remaining live and learn payments this last Friday, in fact, February 18th. The only remaining portion of the APC grant that we're expecting is the federal or LSTA portion, which is $1,936,144, which is used to support our delivery operations. Investment income was $9,653 through January, or 42.5% below the budgeted amount. As this was due to both the Illinois funds and the Hinsdale Bank money market rates remaining remaining below the 0.14% rate that we had budgeted. Both Illinois funds and Hinsdale Bank's interest rates did increase to 0.089% and 0.13% since December. Interest rates had either remained unchanged or declined for a year prior to the gradual increases that we began to see in October. Since I've written my report, even the predictions for interest rate increases have changed, which demonstrates what a fluid and changeable environment we're experiencing right now. The Federal Reserve is now expected to raise interest rates up to 7 times during this calendar year, with the first and largest increase of 0.25% expected in mid-March. This was just revised in the last 2 days and takes into account both the current war in the Ukraine and the rapidly rising inflation rates. During the month of January, Rails invested in a series of treasury notes with laddered maturities every 6 months for the next 2 years, as we discussed this last meeting. The returns on these investments range from 0.209% to 0.9%. These returns have 2 components. One component will be the semi-annual coupon interest that were paid, and the other component will be the $27,301 difference between the purchase price of the investments and the face value of the investments. Accounting standards require that Rails record these investments at their current fair market value of $3,849,972. And for reference, the face value of the investments are $3,890,000. The fair market value is the amount that Rails could expect to recover as of January 31st from disposing of these investments prior to their maturities. This difference is recorded as an offset to investment income. The total offset amount is $13,401, which is the difference between the purchase price and this fair market value. The fair market value will fluctuate as interest rates change, but will gradually increase to the face value of the investments as they near their maturity dates. Since interest rates are expected to rise over this calendar year, I would like to emphasize that we may temporarily fall behind the market rate, but with maturities occurring every 6 months, we should be able to stay even with or ahead of the market rate overall for the portfolio. This is being approached as more of a long-term investment strategy for Rails, but we will continue to evaluate our options with our contact at PMA as these investments mature. Expenditures through January of $7,442,763 were $400,656 below budget. Nearly all major cost categories were under budget, with the notable exceptions of course, supplies, postage, and printing expenditures and library materials this month. These overages were due to the completion of the fiscal year 2021 budgeted laptop replacement purchase earlier this year and the January portion of the group purchase renewal for the Communico Cloud platform. This group purchase is completely offset by reimbursement revenues from the participating member libraries, so this overage does not affect the bottom line. Delivery, I did want to highlight something with delivery this month. Delivery department expenditures through January of $1,995,231 were $122,399 below budget. Again, nearly all major cost categories were under budget with the exception of vehicle expenses. Fuel costs have risen above budgeted levels in recent months with the war in the Ukraine and inflation. Vehicle repairs and maintenance have increased during January and February, both due to the aging of Rails's fleet and some recent repairs that will be reimbursed by our insurance. And that's just about all that I have. May I answer any questions? Thank you. Oh, Tom?
Thank you, Sharon. That a lot of information there.
Yes.
Just for
Thank
the
you for
record,
that.
Scott Poynton joined the meeting.
Welcome, Scott. And now it's time for 7.1 reports from Rail President. I would, you had the committee reports emailed to you earlier this week. We are going to have another committee that will be added to this due to the time of the year. It's the nominating committee, and we'll be setting up that committee here in the next week or so. Hope to have that in place by March 8th. Did anyone have any questions from the committee reports? Or any addition to the reports? Okay, if not, next up is Deidre with the Rails report.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. I do have a few things to add to my report and some things to comment on. First of all, we have a new format to the report in line with our new strategic plan goals. We've, for several years, organized the reports according to the goals of the strategic plan, so you can follow the progress. And so that is what you see here. First up, I would like to say that I had said that, is there a question? No. I had indicated that Jeanette Durucki would be at the meeting today, but our data research assistant, but she could not attend, but she will come to a future meeting so that you can meet her. I wanted to also note that you do have the consortia reports that we give you every quarter, I think, that are attached to this report. Let's see, we had some updates. We did have another meeting with Chris Brown from the Chicago Public Library, I think last week, or maybe earlier this week. Time is hard to keep track of and flying by. Anyway, so that's the second of our monthly meetings, and I think that we all find them very useful, Monica, Chris, and I. And I wanted to also tell you, I told you last month about the related to the LSAP Sustainability Working Group work. We did have a meeting, a couple of meetings with the State Library and Heartland to discuss a suggestion that came up at that working group about looking at a potential statewide ILS. So we did have a meeting, another meeting just earlier this week that also included Ann Craig from Carly. And it was a large meeting and just, brainstorming about how to move forward. And it was agreed that we would move forward to look at possible ways of doing resource sharing in Illinois in different ways that would be more inclusive of libraries that aren't currently either members of LSAPs or members of Find More or Automated or members of Carly. In other words, to, bring more libraries to the table potentially, and also to make it better for users, less sort of fractured, fewer barriers, and more efficient, so better use of tax dollars. Whether these things can all be accomplished is unknown, but everybody agreed that it's a good time to have the conversation. It's been a while since we've really looked at it at a high level. And we also agreed to that we need somebody, an objective leader of this project, because there's a lot of, a lot of vested interest. Nothing wrong with vested interest, but nevertheless, people are used to what they have and may not want to change it. So it was agreed that since the working group, the Rails working group has already sort of started down this path, that we would continue looking for consultants and invite all the stakeholders who I mentioned were at the last meeting to the working group meeting, which is on March 21st. I think that's right. Is that what it is, Anne? Or is it the 18th? It's later in March.
It's the 21st.
21st, thank you. It's the vernal equinox. So that is my update on that, and we'll keep updating you. Does anybody have any questions about that particular topic right now? It's a conversation. It's not a solution. It's just a conversation about what might be possible. And I should say Greg McCormick was also at the meeting. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you? The statement of economic interest will be due this year, as it always is, around May. There have been some changes to it. And I think that there's going to be some guidance that's issued by the Secretary of State, as I understand it, according to our attorney, if anybody has questions about it. Do you see that Beth Teppen is out there?
I do. I can't get her in.
Oh.
Stacy has to try. Thank you.
All right. I just think I thought I just did it. Sorry, folks, just trying to. Anyway, so a statement of economic interest, yes. Of course, I sent you all the email yesterday that the Senate Bill 3497, the expansion of Cards for Kids, did pass the Senate 52-0, which is quite a resounding victory. We'll be talking more about that later in the Universal Service Report later on in the meeting. Also, so just, that we are approaching February 28th, which is when the governors had said that the mask mandate would be lifted. We have still, at least as of the last moment that I checked, have still not seen the details of that, of what his new order, or what it will look like. So we've been trying to figure out, to predict what might happen. We did get some very helpful guidance from the state library today that basically says that that the Secretary of State's department, for the most part, not everybody, because they've got motor vehicles and they have all different kinds of aspects. But the overarching policy, and please, Greg, if I say anything wrong, because as you said, it's more complicated than you might think. In any case, masks will be recommended when social distancing is possible. There will also be continued testing, bi-weekly testing of unvaccinated staff. There's a lot of other pieces in the state library policy related to, more than 2 people in a vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what is most pertinent to Rails, that those are the pieces of the policy. We're still waiting for the CDC. Their announcement is supposed to come out today. Heartland has already let us know that they are going to mask optional, I think, not recommended, but just optional on Monday, the 28th. And so, as I say, we're still waiting for the CDC. We think it will be similar to the governor's, to what the state library is doing. So that's what we're thinking we're going to do. So what this means is that for and for meetings, I should say specifically, I think we will go back to hybrid meetings. People will be able to come into the buildings for meetings like this one, committee meetings, etc., but that we will not be requiring the physical quorum that is required when we're not, under the executive order, the emergency declaration. Staff will, we've already started encouraging staff to come back into the building. We haven't made any decisions yet about, in-person training or any of that. So Monica, what did I leave out? Because I'm sure I left something out.
You really covered a lot. I think it's
Okay.
the most important part is to just highlight the difference between requiring masks and recommending them. That's really the difference that we're looking at here in terms of that, and the continuation of the testing program. Those were two of the things we were really talking a lot about. And we are eager to see those CDC guidelines, but everything we've read seems to indicate that they will be in line with those changes.
I would
Did you
also
wanna-
note that
Yes.
our policy is not permanent yet.
Right.
It will
Thank
be,
you.
everyone has been advised, it will, it's a trial period through April 1st, and it will be reevaluated based upon any changes that have occurred within the staff, quite honestly, if there's been too much exposure.
I think perhaps the word permanent may end up becoming an obsolete word in our lexicon.
That's quite possible.
Yeah. Certification is ongoing. It ends on March 31st as per usual. So any questions about any of that? I know it was a lot. Okay.
Well, thank you, Deidre. And now it's on to Rails Service of the Month report, measuring the impact of Rails program services on members. Grant, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Grant Halter, Data Analysis Manager here at Rails. And the last time I was Service of the Month was November 2020. So it's been a little bit over a year. And I just wanted to touch on a few things that came up in that meeting and share some of the progress on that. There were several comments from board members to that presentation about adding data resources to the website. And we did that actually about a month or two after that meeting, but I just wanted to go over that again. It exists, it's called the Data in Libraries page. It's one of the Pulse pages. I'm going to go ahead and, I cannot share my screen at the moment. Well, that Data in Libraries page has listed a lot of different data resources, IPLAR data, biblioboard usage data, e-read inventory data. I've created a map portal as well for staff to access. We also post data-related podcasts, articles, deals and discounts, anything Rails and data related are there. It's gotten decent traffic from members and non-members actually, just people digging around and looking for data. So we're pretty happy to have that going. I keep it updated as best I can. But it's pretty good to have. Is this sharing the link to that page? Thank you, Joe.
Do you need to share your screen, Grant? Do we need to do something to help you? Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
We're on it. Thanks.
Great. Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, so here's the data page. Just a quick visual. Some data and dashboards, podcasts, other events, a lot of CE events and archives here. So it's just kind of a nice go-to place for members if they ever want to access data, or they can find me to ask for other things. I also wanted to show off this map portal, which I just started developing. We had these in the background that only I could see, but now this page is available to anyone with their link, really. And I'm starting to post more maps because I love maps and I think they're really useful for members to also visualize. We only have 2 at the moment. One is a map of the reopening status survey and the results for that, which has been around since the pandemic started. And then another one, I've started to add IPLAR data and the resource sharing map to this. So has all the public libraries, only public libraries at the moment, by service area. And you can click on one and see kind of their core IPLAR data, just getting the ball rolling with this. I think it's really neat, and maps are fun.
I love maps too. Absolutely.
Good visual. So plans for this map portals to get more in-depth, more useful maps as requests come in for other data that would be useful to see in map form. I'll be adding stuff to this.
And Grant, the colors are about the different consortia, right? That's what that.
So
Or-
there's several different maps on this right
Okay.
side. The default I have is resource sharing map, and that's by
Yep.
consortia, and then gray is
Yep.
Heartland.
Yep.
So you have standalones in gray up here, and then the different consortia as well.
Right, thanks.
Okay. Stop share for just a moment. So yeah, that was that, sharing all the data. Another thing that was mentioned was doing more data training. And unfortunately, we had a lot of larger projects that came up last year. So I wasn't able to do as much kind of hands-on face-to-face data trainings. Dan Bostrom and I did do an online roundtable at one point, and we were talking the other day about doing those more regularly. And that could be either me sharing data I've done or highlighting Rails members to share their data projects. I hear little bits and pieces about libraries or consortia doing things with data, and I think just us creating a platform for those ideas to be shared can help spread the message and help increase the data literacy amongst our members. All right, and as for new and fun things for this year, as you all know, we have the new strategic plan, and in the works at the moment is an action plan that I don't have at the moment, but I'm excited that we're going to be adding metrics. We have measures in it, and we're going to be adding metrics to help kind of tie in all of the data Rails has access to and collects to those strategic plan objectives and measures. I think it's going to be a really nice cohesive piece that you can see what all of the data that we pull to help support the actions and view progress for all those pieces. So excited for that. He also mentioned certification is going, and this is the first year we asked school libraries a special set of questions to help gather better data about those libraries. I'm sure Dee's mentioned a few times before that school library data is difficult to gather. The State Board of Ed has some tricky places for us to find data. And that's also why we hired Janet Durucki to help us with this effort, because it's really almost a full-time job to gather this data in a sustainable way. And that's the key, sustainable. There's been a lot of other one-off projects over the years. And unfortunately, they kind of slow down. So we're trying to set up a new way to collect this data, and certification is one of these avenues we're going to try to collect this data. So currently we're collecting the number of library staff at a school that work in the library, what their title is, do they have the special information, do they have the library information specialist endorsement, what's their education level, and what's their full-time equivalent. We're also collecting library collection budget and the size of the collection. We've been getting pretty decent data. I know we've seen a lot of comments that this data is difficult to collect, especially it being the first time. Staff weren't necessarily ready for all this, but I've been really encouraged to see how much data we've gathered. I'm excited to start analyzing it after the certification period has ended, just to see what the kind of the baseline of these school libraries looks like. And I'm sure I'll be back at one of the board meetings soon after to report those results and talk about next steps. Other things we've been up to, lots of surveys this year. We just finished writing a big continuing education impact and follow-up survey. Joe Philippek and I finished that. So we'll be going out to all the CE events to help gather better information about satisfaction of those events, but also get suggestions to how to improve those events and offer different topics. Explore More, I'm actually kind of excited about this Explore More survey I worked on with
Jessica.
Yeah, sorry, name blank. With Jessica. It's kind of a two-pronged survey. One is user satisfaction. How are people navigating the Explore More site, signing up for attractions, but also we're gathering information to be helpful for those attractions. Are these people first-time visitors to their attraction through Explore More? Are they interested in visiting again? Did they spend money at the attraction is a big one. So we're going to be sharing that information with the attractions as they request to try to get some kind of mutual benefit going with that survey. And another big survey we did was the big eNews eval survey, which was the largest eNews eval we've done since 2018, I think, which before I arrived. Got 450 responses, great results, asking about everything from content format style to general suggestions and kind of what frequency is. So we got a lot of useful data to try to improve the eNews, to both improve it for current weekly readers, but also kind of expand the growth for that to get more people interested from all kinds of libraries. And last piece I have is to show off another dashboard I made that was meant for the LSAP working group. And this was requested by the group just to get a better idea of the landscape of the LSAPs. So I just pulled in kind of the core data, service population, operating expenditures, LSAP fee, those kinds of things, as well as kind of the per capita numbers to show off to the working group to get a better feel for where everything stands. Everyone kind of has a general idea, but seeing the numbers definitely puts a different kind of context in. So I'll just show three of those dashboards real quick right here. So this is an example of one, just the total service population of each LSAP. The graph is of the median population per library, and just how it differs. Just seeing the visual is always interesting, puts different ideas in your head.
Mm-hmm.
I like this one a lot as well. It's a bar chart of operating expenditures per capita for all the libraries in LSAPs next to each other. You can see the median is 45, the max is up around 200. So there's just a wide range and it kind of flattens out. So seeing that visual of the breadth of all the different libraries was useful to see. This, of course, all the fun filters and sorters up here as well, if people want to explore. And then my last one, and probably one of my most favorite ones, is of these scatter plots. As always, I'm sure I've showed them before. This is a scatter plot that looks at the operating expenditure versus the LSAP fee per library. You can see each of these colored dots on the graph represent a different LSAP. So you can see the trends. It was really cool to just see the lines that just come up because of their various formulas for calculating the fee to be in the LSAP. But also there's some variation within it as well. And you can see the different levels to compare the different LSAPs. So I think this was really useful, got a lot of good feedback, and a few requests to make different dashboards that would also be helpful. So this was fun, and I love sharing data and making it more accessible. Of course, all the IPLAR data is always accessible, but putting it visually always kind of packs a different kind of punch.
Grant, can
So-
you go back to the one that has the, I think it's the service population one that includes the standalones? Yeah, I mean, I think this was just, I think initially very, I think kind of startling to the working group because of the number of standalone libraries. And how low the average and median population is. Just, it's just when you're in an LSAP, you don't realize how many standalones there are and how many and how, I mean, there's some that very large and very well-funded standalones right around here, but then it really dwindles. So the visual stuff is so important in understanding a situation. I hope I didn't interrupt you, Grant.
No,
were
that was
you-
all good. I was
Okay.
done. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. I can get out of the screen share real quick. If you have any questions, let me know, or thoughts or suggestions. I'm all ears.
No questions for Grant?
I actually do have one, Grant.
Mhm.
Where can you, you showed on the Rails website where you have your maps and all your data, but this thing that you made for the ALSUP, is that going to be available that we can actually look at it and play with it? And it had some really good information, and you had all the filters and things, and I would like to take time when I'm not paying attention to a meeting and look at it,
Yep.
but if it was just for the LSAP meeting, I just wondered if you could put it up somewhere so we could get to it, without hurting it.
Yeah, so I'm getting the nod from Dee. I certainly
Yeah.
can post this version. I've actually made a different version of a public library IPLAR dashboard that is posted. I'll just show it real quick on the data page. So it's right at the top, this public IPLAR dashboard. This is a different one, different iterations depending on whatever my inspiration is for that moment. So there's this one of more scatter plots by operating expenditure, materials, building square footage. So there's this one. You can download this data as well if you need it. But I will post this one for the working group right below it, kind of in this first group
Okay.
of Rails reports, dashboards, and maps.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
May I ask a question too?
Mhm.
Hey, Grant, I represent a school library, and I know that our colleagues are interested in the information that Rails is asking on the recent form, and just interested in what your vision or some of your thoughts or ideas would be to how to share out that school data for us, for ourselves, as well as for other people who want to get a good handle on what's going on.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's going to be a lot of data, and there's going to be the mixture of kind of quantitative and qualitative data, because we're asking for just the straight up budgets, the numbers, the total collection size. So that stuff will be easy to share. I can make another dashboard that's open to anyone to come and view and download that data and review that way. There's also kind of an other category for collection size that is kind of an open response. That part might be a little trickier, but I can certainly pull that stuff or kind of get general thoughts to share. But I imagine I will be building some kind of Google Data Studio dashboard report that can be part narrative, but also part report tool data visualization piece that people can access that information from.
Cool. I love the idea that school libraries will have a dashboard. It sounds very official and scientific. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Any other questions for Grant? Grant, thank you very much. Your presentations are always very informative.
Thank you.
Now on to Greg in the Illinois State Library report.
Good afternoon, everyone. It seems like we just met not long ago, honestly, but I will give you some updates. So, a lot of focus is now because the General Assembly is back in session. They're in session today. And a big item of interest to the system certainly is the Secretary of State's funding requests for FY23. Last time we met, I did not have the exact bill numbers, but there's actually two requests. One Senate request, Senate Bill 4151. They're identical, by the way. And then House Bill 5681. The appropriation hearing for the House occurred on Wednesday evening, actually. So I was participating in that with the Secretary's team. And the increased request for library system funding remains in both bills at this time. Of course, we have to work through the entire budget process for the year, but we are in the initial stages. What that would mean for system area per capita, and I know that Deirdre asked me earlier this week about the application process. I think we'll be sending that to the systems very, very soon, as like within days, because I was reviewing, and I don't believe it's really going to, as far as requirements or the questions will differ from this year's application process. It may be some of the content behind because of increased funding, the answers might change somewhat. But we'll know better as we work through this process. I don't expect that due date to be any sooner than June 1, which is the initial date we started with last year. So there should be ample time for any modification to occur as the budget develops, which I think the state is still planning on that to be resolved much sooner than in previous years. So as mentioned earlier, we are glad that we're actually ahead of schedule on release of funding to the library systems this year and for all of our grant programs. We did make the award notices that I mentioned last time to all the school libraries. Those have been issued. And we will begin processing those payments next week. And I would expect those to be expedited this year as well. So other than, I will say too, we've not seen the governor's guidelines yet either on masking, nor the CDC. So, but I'm glad I could share that information earlier with both the library system. So that's really all I have for today.
Can you say those bill numbers again, Greg, to be sure I have them right?
Senate Bill 4151. The introducing sponsor was Senator Harmon, and House Bill 5681, introduced by Representatives Harris and Crespo.
Great. Okay.
Greg, may I ask, since you have a better handle on bills, I gave a witness slip against a bill that was floated to require school libraries to post their collection online in some form other than a publicly accessible catalog. I wonder, do you know anything? And I apologize, I can't. I'm trying to find the name of the number of the bill, but I'm not able to. Does that ring a bell, or do you know anything about that?
It does not, and I'd be interested in knowing what that bill number is myself, if you would.
Yes,
I did a witness slip too. I'm gonna go look in my email and see if I can find it. I did it too. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe maybe if every library was tweeting about it, and I feel like that's how I grabbed a hold of the need to give input on that bill. But
that was not sent to me by our legislative staff, so I would be interested in seeing that.
So this is, Monica, this is a bill that would require, could you just say it again to be sure I wrote it down correctly?
Yeah, so, and Becky, please jump in too, because I of course am remembering, but it's similar to a bill I think that was floated in another state that would require school libraries to post their entire collection title by title on a publicly accessible website. And I remember at first thinking, well, we already do that. We have the catalog, but it was more than just here search. It was here's a list in maybe like a PDF kind of form
Oh my
that
God.
someone who wanted to, to keyword search for certain book titles, I can only imagine that's what it's for, could more easily target which school libraries had the books they were interested in.
You're muted, Becky.
It was House Bill 273. I muted because I was typing furiously. It was House Bill 273, and it came from Kelly Jensen, who writes for Book Right but lives in Illinois, and it was for Illinois residents. So she sent directions for Illinois people on how to fill out your witness slip, and that was on February 22nd. I think there was another one too, though. You're an opponent to this one. That's what I have. Sorry. House Bill 273. Appropriations, Elementary and Secondary Education Committee.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing this to everyone's attention.
And I see in the chat, thank you, Anne, for giving a little bit of an update to it. Oh, no, wait, maybe that was.
Well, that's just another one that's similar.
Another
it's a
one, yeah.
similar issue.
They will not advance. Okay, but this is not the one that you're citing, so we don't know about that one. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
we'll
I will
look it up.
Take a look at that real quick while we.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. That's great. Oh, looks like Joe already did it. Did you get it, Joe? Referred to Rules Committee on referred to rules on February 18th.
It's right here. The link Joe gave us.
Yeah.
Now I don't. It says amends the school code, requires a school board to ensure parents and guardians of pupils enrolled in the school district are free to petition the school board and provide public comment at all public and regularly scheduled meetings, have access to certain information. So that's what Monica was talking about. There it is.
Can you see this? There you go. It says referred, so that's a good thing, right? Greg, isn't it? You're muted.
Sorry, yes, there appears to be a delay. I could not get back to my unmute button. I'm sorry. I'm straight to read.
Okay.
Those have to move out of committee by a certain deadline, and I believe that's today.
Okay. I'll stop sharing this now. Oops. Get my mouse to work again. Okay.
Whenever it's appropriate, this is Scott. I have an unrelated question for Greg. I don't know if now's the good time, but so Greg, the state library taking on the census count thing for per capita purposes was wonderful. It was just so great. But I already know that there was some undercounting in my area, and I have at least one community that's planning a special census. So will the state library be involved just from this point forward in all censuses and how that pertains to per capita?
Well, yeah, and technically we always have been. There's always been a provision regarding the per capita grant rules that if there's a special additional documentation that's provided by a library, that has to be entertained. I mean, this map that you see was our starting point of this was the methodology utilized. And if there are discrepancies or there are changes because of special censuses or changes, we will have to incorporate those. Now, those will have to become official in some capacity or documented before we can entertain the change.
Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't know all the work that we didn't have to do because you all did it for us this time. Will that if there's a special census, instead of us doing all that work again, will your folks do it, what they did this time?
Yeah, I mean, we'll incorporate that into the documentation our plan is to continue our relationship with the university to maintain this for
Okay,
public libraries in the state and expand what was contained in there.
that's fantastic. Okay, thanks.
Greg, thank you for that, because our library district is having an issue as well. We saw the numbers and everyone's jaws dropped of how many less people we have in our district. So, so any other questions for Greg and the Illinois State Library? Thank you very much, Greg, for your time today and all your information. Now it's on to new business 8.1, the delivery update with Deidre, Monica, and Mark.
Thank you. So we're giving you a progress report here. Monica is going to update you all and will answer any questions you might have. This is been a long process. We're making some progress. Go ahead, Monica.
Thank you, Deirdre. Good afternoon, everybody. We did want to let you know that our consultant, Greg Pronovitz, had planned to be here today to deliver his report. He has a non-life threatening medical emergency that kept him from being here. So we just wanted to make sure you were aware. But I will just cover some of the highlights of the report that he delivered in December, and then let you know a little bit about where we're at now. So just to cover some of the background for those of you who may not have been part of this process back in 2020 when Greg last reported to the board, the RFP project was preceded by an RFI project, which was coordinated by our same consultant, Greg Pronovitz. The study and the RFI results were issued to Rails in October 2020, and then Greg met with the board in November of 2020 to sort of describe and explain some of the things that were seen at that time. There's some major observations here that we did want to highlight with you, and some of these are things that you have certainly heard before in other capacity. So the delivery volume, of course, did shrink significantly in the early stages of COVID-19 in the pandemic, but volume is now approaching pre-pandemic levels as libraries have reopened and more materials are available. That has been something that we've been watching closely, but we wanted to make sure you were aware of that as well. And as you heard in Sharon's report, there is a trend for increased pricing as it pertains to delivery. So that includes things like fuel and vehicle repairs, as well as services that might be provided by potential vendors, that are related, of course, to labor costs. And then the third piece is more around the potential of an automated materials handling system. We did find that our vendors who originally were part of the RFI process, when that was part of what was being discussed, are very eager to work with Rails. So even through the RFP process, when the automation piece was sort of off the table, there was a lot of response from them. So of course, that was something that Greg wanted to make sure that all of you were aware of as well. Further into the report, as you've seen, it gives you just kind of a highlight of exactly how things have been going, including the project milestones and things about the issue of the RFP and the draft of the RFP. I'm going to skip ahead to just reviewing the vendor responses. So we did receive 4 responses, and as we have noted to you before, 2 were from vendors that proposed sorting and delivery services, and 2 were from vendors of automated materials handling systems. So there was really only 2 RFP responses that were responsive to the request. And so those are highlighted here. Vendor A was one that proposed sorting and delivery systems in the areas served by Cole Valley, East Peoria, and our Rockford service centers. That proposal for services was acceptable, but the pricing was very high. And then in vendor B, they also proposed sorting and delivery services, but for the Elmhurst area and the Bolingbrook Service Center area. The proposal for services also was acceptable, but the pricing seemed very high. So that was something that we saw in both cases. What you'll see now are these recommendations that have come from Greg. And so the first one is just to work with vendors to ensure that the proposed pricing is accurate and mutually understood. As many of you understand, delivery is complex, including the way of pricing delivery is complex. And this is something that is sometimes difficult to communicate with vendors who are responding to an RFP. So it did require a lot of follow-up meetings to clarify information, to make sure that people had an accurate understanding of what was necessary. And that did result in some revised rates, as you saw. And so that was helpful to be able to get a little bit closer to where we were hoping to be. However, when we received the revised rates, our discussions with vendor A still seemed very, very high compared to what Rails is providing, whereas vendor B, we still have discussions that are ongoing. The pricing is more competitive than it was when originally offered, but there are still some discussions to be had, which leads sort of directly into number 2. And that is the recommendation to offer additional work to vendor B contingent on developing a collaborative relationship and quality improvements. Throughout the pandemic, there have been a lot of challenges to delivery, both in terms of our vendor, our own services, and also what we've seen nationally with our relationships with other delivery services. There's just been a lot with the pandemic that has been difficult in terms of responding. And so we did see what we think is a service quality decline. And so that was addressed here. So Rails is designing a new vendor agreement that calls for an improvement in collaboration and quality of services. And that does include penalty clauses within that agreement that would ask that they respond to those. If the vendor is able to respond over an agreed upon period of time, then the recommendation of the consultant would be to offer the additional business at Bolingbrook at that level. And he does kind of go through what some of those responses might be. Now, of course, one piece of outsourcing would be that the staff would definitely be affected. And though transfers could be possible, they would be difficult because of the geography of Rails and how that is working. So the third piece is just reconsidering the mandatory nature of any vendor conference in future RFPs. And this really just goes through the same piece we talked about the detail and how difficult it is to communicate some of those things and how that affects the length of the process. So those are our recommendations from our consultant. We know that this has been a long process and that you may have questions. So I wanted to open it up to you now, and Mark and Deirdre and I will do our best to answer those for you.
You'll be hearing about this again, obviously, which is, as I said, this has been a long project, big project, but we just want to keep you up to date. And okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? No? Okay. So next is Deidre with the unfinished business, the board election process.
Yes, thanks, Tom. This is just a brief update, really. So as you know, we've been talking, we talked the last meeting about working on some changes to how we do our election process. And as Tom indicated earlier in the meeting, it is that time of the year again. So there's a couple of things that are going on here. First of all, we do have a current vacancy that we have received 10 nominations. And we had talked the last time about the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion to bring that, more diversity and inclusion, equity to the board to, be more fully representative of the Rails service area. And so I did talk to our attorney about that, how best to go about that. And she indicated that we really need some initial sort of fundamental policies related to diversity. We need to have, we need to have a framework for not just for the board, but for staff and partners, vendors, et cetera. So I did meet with Alex Mancina, he's the chair of the policy committee, and with Tom to just talk this over. And so we're going to get the policy committee working on this so that this will be ready for the board election next year. As we said, we knew we couldn't really change the election process too much before the upcoming election, which is in soon, probably May. So on the other hand, I did want to remind everybody that we did last year change the bylaws related to the nominating committee, so that there are now two board members will serve on the nominating committee. And previous to that, it was just the general Rails membership were just, where the committee members were selected from. And last year, our board president, Michael Campbell, was very intent on making sure that, well, to be perfectly, frank about it, I did a lot of the work related to the nominating committee, and staff is very involved in the board election process naturally because it happens on the web and we set up the form. And so, it's better to have a little more distance, between staff and, board nomination, et cetera. So I just wanted to update you all about that. We are, I know Emily is working on getting an executive committee meeting set up for the board, the committee, to look over the nominees and interview potential, candidates for the board vacancy, and then that will come to the, the full board eventually. So I just wanted to update you all about that. Happy to answer any questions.
Deirdre, this is Karen.
Yes.
I'm confused as to what kind of policies are you talking about? That, like you said, we had to come up with a framework of policies in order to get inclusion on the board.
Right.
Other than, I don't understand what kind of policies are you talking about?
Well, what our attorney said is that if we're going to have criteria, which is maybe a word that I used, about related to equity, diversity, and inclusion, about who is on the board, that we need to have, she recommends that we adopt a formal diversity policy or program. That we don't want to just address the issue with the board representation, that it needs to be more, broadly applicable to, Rails across, staff and board. It's just because we don't want to be, we don't want people to think that we're applying criteria to who can be on the board when that's not, sort of grounded in a larger policy that is promulgated the way all of our policies are, and the board reviews it.
Well, maybe I'm confused then. If you go online and present yourself as somebody who wants to be on the board, aren't you presented? There isn't anything not keeping you from that, right?
Right, but part of what we had talked about last time at the last meeting, in terms of changes to the board election process. There were bigger ones. We were going to change the whole way we did the election in terms of
Oh, okay.
not just, I know that's why it's going to take a while. In other words, right now, people self-nominate,
Right.
and that's pretty much, that's it. And what we're trying to do is to put something in place so that we have an election process that isn't, is not going to be, I'm not being very articulate here, I apologize. That is not going to make it, is not going to be a barrier for people who are not well known, new to the field, don't have good name recognition, etc. We really want to encourage diversity of opinion, geographic diversity, diversity in experience working in a library, all of the diversity, racial diversity, ethnic, etc., age, all of those things, in order that we bring, a lot of opinions to the table about what rail services should be, because those are the people that we serve.
Right.
And so what Julie Tappendorf recommended was, don't just single out the board. You have to be sure that you're applying, that you have those kinds of policies in place for, everything you do.
Okay.
And that is work, because otherwise it just, that looks arbitrary, I guess. And that's some of the work that the climate team is doing as well, in terms of, for example, the climate team is looking at, and I think Biz talked about this at a previous meeting, our consultant, or Joe, or maybe me, for example, we're looking at the vendors that we work with, what are their policies related to diversity, and, all of those kinds of things, which it's just the way that the world is going now, and it's a good thing, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was just you were being too vague for me, since I've never been through an election.
Right. I know. Right.
Understand. Okay.
I don't mean to be vague. I'm just
No,
trying
that's
trying to be
okay.
careful and not say the wrong.
I know.
Not misspeak. So.
May
Yeah.
I add in another comment too?
Yep.
It maybe just sometimes if you're rearranging the whole collection, it just might as well do more work at the same time. And so I want to bring up the idea of changing the makeup of the board to increase membership, school seats on the board.
Yep, that's it, right, exactly.
Okay, so just want to make sure that that is part of the
yes,
the thought process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will just remind everybody that, and that there has to be a majority of the board have to be public library trustees. And fortunately Greg is here. He can explain that, because I'm not completely, it has to do with how the systems were originally created. Can you explain that a little bit better than me? Anybody can explain it better than me, but I know you can.
They're technically, they were formed by public libraries coming together to form the library systems. And within the service areas of the public libraries, all other types of libraries become that system member as well. So you can't have an academic library being the member of one. So it's driven much by public library participation in the system. And indeed, the statute remains today that 10 public libraries can come together and create or petition to create a new library system within the state. It is driven by public library service areas.
This was news to me as well, until maybe 6 months ago. I thought we could really change it pretty dramatically. I don't know what to, I don't think there's anything we can do about that. Well, anything could be done about anything after a certain point, but which is not to say, Monica, that we can't increase the number of school seats. It just limits our flexibility in that regard. Yeah. There's been a question on chat. There's been a couple of questions on chat, and I want to answer the question. The reason we have a vacancy is that it was Patricia Smith, who was in an at-large seat, who did resign, I think in late November. I just want to remind everybody that, we're not supposed to be chatting because then the public can't see the chat, and that it is essentially, if you have a question, I'd appreciate it if you would, ask it out loud so we can be sure we're in compliance with OMA. Thank you. No, it's okay, Diane. It seems so odd, I know, but that is the case. Thank you. And it's a good question. So glad that I got to answer it. So that's the situation. It's confusing. It's as you say, it's sort of like it's a big project, as you pointed out, Monica, but unfortunately we can't do all the things that we would like to do. Any other questions? All right, that's me then about the board election process.
Well, and it also is a little more complicated because we do have trustees on the board that are actually librarians.
Right.
That have trustee posts.
Like
So,
as in Beth Teppen is one example of that.
and
Alice is another example. Alex Vancina, Diane, maybe more. Becky. Right. So it's hard to keep track of who's wearing what hat.
yes. So thank you for that about the election process. Next up is Sue and Dee with the report on universal service.
Yep.
Do you want me to go ahead and start, Dee?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna just remind everybody about a little background about Universal Service Committee and then go ahead with current Universal Service updates here. The first meeting of the Rails Universal Service Committee was held March 21st, 2019. And then at the October 2019 Rails Board meeting, the Rails Board approved the charge to the Universal Service Committee. Expectations of the Universal Service Committee include recognizing the importance of extending service to the approximately 1 million unserved residents in Illinois, which is slightly over 500,000 of those residents residing in the Rails system. Rails has established a task force to explore solutions to the unserved. The Rails Board formal statement on universal library service was approved by the Rails Board in October of 2021. This statement can be viewed on the Rails website. The first sentence in the statement reflects the feeling of the Rails system, being that as long as even one Illinois resident does not have access to a public library, our state is not meeting its basic obligation to educate all residents. The statement encourages the library community in Illinois to come together under the leadership of the Illinois State Library to develop a plan and timeline for achieving universal service. A formal submission of this statement was forwarded to the Illinois State Library in December of 2021. Much work has been done by members of the Universal Service Committee. Cards for Kids has been adopted, ensuring school-age children who are living in unserved areas and meet certain financial criteria are entitled to a free library card. There is current legislation pending to expand the Card for Kids Act to provide that a library board may adopt regulations waiving the non-resident fee for all persons under the age of 18. And as of yesterday, as you heard earlier, Illinois Senate voted 52-0 in favor, and this now will proceed to the House of Representatives. Multiple listing service. Gail Bush, a committee member, has reported that there is progress to get libraries included on real estate listings. The real estate listing would include information to advise a potential buyer as to whether property is in a library district or not. In a response from the compliance analyst at Midwest Real Estate Data, the suggestion was well received and will be sent to their board for review and possible approval. More to come at the March Universal Service Committee meeting. The state database proposal has been discussed with Senator Laura Murphy. Rails is compiling samples of legislature language from states that currently offer a statewide database program. And just a reminder, Illinois is one of only 2 states that does not have a statewide database program, Colorado being the other. The statewide database proposal focuses on informational resources and not recreational reading. Currently, the database proposal is on hold. Unfortunately, the legislative priorities of the ILA are currently focusing on 2 proposals: the expansion of broadband infrastructure in public libraries and equitable e-book pricing for libraries, both admirable proposals. Rails will continue to advocate for the expansion of the Cards for Kids Act and a statewide database. The next Universal Service meeting will be held on March 10th, 2022. And on this agenda for the meeting will be feedback on the Rails strategic town hall meetings regarding Universal Service, an update on the multiple listing service, and an update on the expansion of the Cards for Kids Act. Dee, do you have anything to add to this?
I guess the only thing I would add is that the Cards for Kids expansion has the added bonus of, a lot of libraries have used intergovernmental agreements to be able to expand access to kids who are not, eligible for the school lunch program, in other words, all kids, but that would no longer be necessary if local boards do adopt the policy that says that they can waive the fees. It's not a mandate. It's just it's permission. So we have our fingers crossed about that, and we'll see what happens. I have to say that, Gail Bush has been really great about the multiple listing service, because I think that's really it doesn't seem like a big thing, and it certainly has been very hard. It's taken, as Sue just, told you, we've been working on this for a couple of years now, but just having that information on the multiple listing service so that when people, are buying a house, they find out in advance. And so maybe they'll change their minds about the house, but maybe not. But at the very least, maybe they won't go into the library and end up yelling at the librarian because they didn't know about it. And it's like it's the librarian's fault when it's not the librarian's fault. So, that is a good thing because it's not our doing. And, so forewarned, right? So anyway, I'm really, really proud of this committee. I think they've done incredible work. So, and it was, Gail who hooked us up with Senator Murphy too, so.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And we'll continue pushing ahead on this.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Sue and Dee, for the report. Now on to Rails board member reports. Now is the time that board members can share any news or about your area or your library. Anybody have anything to report?
Several months ago, our city council in Bloomington approved our library expansion and renovation. It's been, talking to the staff, it's been some 20 years and coming. So they've been very patient, and it's been, we've gone through different cycles of city council members and mayors. And so it's done. And so we're breathing a sigh of relief and we're very happy.
It's wonderful news, Diane. Really wonderful.
I just wanted to report, we had our board meeting at LaGrange this week and we just added a social worker to
Oh,
an
awesome.
open librarian position. We had a social worker who was working in another capacity at the library. And he had left school social work during the pandemic for many reasons. And we had an opening for a full-time librarian. And we, the work of our director, Charity Gallardo, she was able to create a change to that position. And so he does have a master's degree in social work and they're working on his library skills. But being added as a full-time librarian in the adult services department, we're very excited about this.
That's great. That's really great.
Becky, that's really, that is good news. Any other? Okay. If there are no others, we'll go on to meeting recap and agenda building for the next board meeting. The next board meeting will be Friday, March 18th at 1 p.m. Please note that this is a week early due to the PLA conference that is being held out in Portland, Oregon, March 23rd through the 25th. Included will be on the agenda will be an update on Explore More Illinois by Jessica Barnes. I imagine Jeanette will hopefully meet Jeanette at that meeting as well.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, is there anything else we need to put on the agenda? I'm sure you'll hear some more about the nominating committee as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get ready for the upcoming elections. And anything else we need to add?
Not that I can think of right now. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, then this is probably going to disappoint most everyone that we do not have to go into executive session today. So that being said, I hope everybody can go out in the sunshine as we adjourn the meeting today. Thank you very much for attending, and we will see you next month. So we adjourn the meeting at 2:35. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.